All right, Steve Bamford is here, US Open preview, third major of the year. I have a lot more energy for this major. I'm super, super excited to talk to you about Oakmont. I'm actually really curious what you have to say about Oakmont because I spent the last 48 hours bunkered up mapping out the golf course. But thank you for joining me today.
And it's always a pleasure. The majors. I must say, I've got that kind of. I'm far more enthusiastic for Oakmont than I was for Quail Hollow. Put it that way.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh, can I just say as well? I am the British bloke on these major previews, so that's a
Sure.
good thing, I think. Yeah.
You're our strong British representation at Inside Sports Network. You are beloved
Absolutely.
in our community as the bloke. Brian
Exactly.
Kirshner attempts sometimes to be the bloke and cosplay someone from London. And, no one will be the bloke in the way that you are the capital B bloke.
Absolutely. I am the bloke. Right, let's
Well,
talk Oakmont.
let's talk Oakmont. We're hot, Steve. I don't know if we've ever entered a US Open where we've gone 2 for 2. You hit a big Rory Mac. I mean, listen, I don't think that we deserve a ton of flowers for hitting 2 5-1 bets, but hitting, picking the winner of golf tournaments is not easy, as you and I
No.
both know. You are on Rory McIlroy 550-ish to win the Masters for the first major of the year. I was on Scottie Scheffler at plus 550 to win the PGA Championship. A price on Scottie Scheffler that feels like it was from a different era, Steve.
Oh wow, yeah, absolutely.
He's half that.
Yeah, over in the UK, I'm seeing at the very, very best is 3-1,
Mm-hmm.
and you get the feeling he's going to get backed in from there.
I don't find that to be bettable. I mean, we'll get to a full discussion on Scotty. We should probably start with the golf course.
Yeah.
But I mean, before we dive into Oakmont, close the page on Quail Hollow. Any big surprises for you that you want to touch on before we dive into this major championship?
I thought the leaderboard was crazy. It was a strange major. I was on Bryson, as you know. Everything seemed to be going along quite nicely until the double bogey.
I thought
Run
it
he
was a
had.
2-horse race pretty much most of the
Yeah,
golf tournament.
it should have been, shouldn't it? It should
As
have
a
been a head. It should have been mano a mano, head
I
to head.
felt so. As a Scheffler ticket holder, I could tell you Bryson was the only guy on that leaderboard I was afraid of.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
and Steve, you shouldn't have been super. I mean, there were some oddball names, but everything we talked about in terms of like the driver putter combination, I think the only surprise, which I felt like did a decent job of highlighting as well, is like this is not really a major championship quality golf course. And therefore, we may not really get a major championship quality leaderboard. And there were a few imposters that I think hung around a lot longer than they really deserve to. But that's what you get at signature events on the PGA Tour. And as we talked about many a time, that golf course had more in common with a signature event than a major championship. This golf course, however, is like, I think that if you told me find one golf course in America to put in the dictionary for US Open championship golf course, I think I would choose Oakmont.
It just looks intimidating, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was designed to be the hardest golf course in the world in 1903.
You know, the way it sits there above the turnpike that goes along the bottom of the hill, and it's all set on that hill with canted fairways, some hills up, others straight down. It's a phenomenal piece of land. As you said, 1903, Henry Founds, the only course that Henry Founds ever actually designed was Oakmont.
One and done.
That's crazy.
One could hope to have a career like that.
Yeah. Fazio redesigned in 06 prior to 16. And then, of course, we've had this Gil Hans and Jim Wagner inspired renovation that opened in 23.
Mm-hmm.
It's now playing as a 7,372 yard par 70. So, I mean, that's long for a par 70, but I wouldn't say it's crazy long.
Nope.
And we can run through. I've got some notes here around the final round and the clubs that DJ was using to actually plot his way around that golf course. And there's some interesting mixes in terms of club selection. So we'll go through that as well. Clearly, no water on the property. They've actually brought down the number of sand bunkers. We're looking only at 168. Acres of fairway 27. The agronomy, you know me, love the agronomy side of things. So bent grass with Poana fairways. With you can tell we're now getting up into upstate United States. Kentucky bluegrass with perennial rye and Poana. They're promising that this rough will be a 5-inch rough golf course on Thursday. They then, of course, won't cut it. They've also, Gil Hans, one of the main things he's done with this renovation with Wagner is actually enlarge the putting surfaces.
Yeah.
So we're looking
They're
at
huge.
8,500 square feet, Andy, on average. And of course, they contain West Pennsylvania Poana. So you could debate, does Poana here relate to Poana at Torrey Pines or Poana at Pebble? It looks different. It's finer, but effectively it is Poana grass. So
yeah, I think you want to look at the East Coast Poana.
Yes,
golf
any
courses,
kind of form we can
Yeah.
find on Poana on northeastern golf courses. Take a TPC River Highlands as an example. Detroit. Some of the golf
Wingfoot.
courses that they've played across the old. It used to be the Barclays tournament, the first stop off on
Shinnecock, I think, has those greens.
These kind of classical northeastern golf courses. That's the kind of form we want to be looking for.
The number one thing that I think is going to define this week, unfortunately, Steve, is weather.
Yeah.
And one thing about Oakmont is, we've never really, I was listening to an interview with Bob Ford for the Golfers Journal. I want to do a proper job shouting out them because it was a really great interview with the head pro who's been at Oakmont for 40 years. And, he spends his winters and at Seminole, he like a real ball knower, like knows the golf course, every single blade of grass. And he said, if the golf course is wet and we get weather, then the winning score is going to be 5 under par. And if the golf course is dry and firm and fast and baked out, then the winning score is going to be 5 over par. And it's interesting because he was dead on. Like if you look at basically 2016, when people forget, I mean, it rained a ton in the lead up to that tournament. I know the golf course still played super hard and was a brutal test and the greens were super fast. They got a ton of rain in the lead up in that tournament. So that should tell you how on its own difficult Oakmont is, where even if the golf course gets dumped on, which I kind of think it will, you're still probably looking at a -5 winning score. Now, that's the difference between a -5 winning score and the type of crazy tournament where it gets won at 5 over par, like Angel Cabrera in 2007. And that year in 2007, Bob Ford was saying, he said, I've been at Oakmont for 7 US Opens. The only time we actually got firm and fast conditions was in 2007 with Angel Cabrera, and it was won at 5 over par.
Yeah, the forecast, I mean, I'll take you back to March. They've had 14.1 inches of rain since the start of March.
Yeah.
So over here in Europe, we'd classify that 356 millimeters. They actually, today, they've had over half an inch already, 16 millimeters. And as we record this podcast, it's saying on the weather app I'm looking at that it's foggy there. So the worrying thing here is that Friday there is set to be more rain, and they're saying there's 100% probability of that Friday afternoon US time. Sunday looks wet. Monday looks wet. One thing I will say is part of this Gil Hans renovation, they have fitted sub-air to all of the greens. So
Greens are going to be crazy firm and fast no matter what.
yes.
It could pour all night on Wednesday night, and the greens, just like you saw at Quail Hollow for the most part, are going to be super firm and fast no matter what. Technology has just, with sub-air, you can do that now.
Well, I thought Bryson DeChambeau's video that came out this week was very enlightening with him playing that practice round.
Yeah.
And he was, I don't know if it was this week or to be fair, it's immaterial, but you could tell it was cold, it was wet, it was windy, and those greens were still releasing to an extent that you would find amazing just looking at the lushness of the golf course. But I just thought that video was interesting because it was cold, windy. Clearly, it wasn't up to the stimp meters that the organisers would want the USGA. And there's Bryson; he's shooting level par. And to be fair, he's happy to be getting out of there level par. I think he wanted really to shoot 2 under, something like that. But that does kind of tally up with what we're thinking here. I genuinely think what I don't know is, and maybe you know, what did the leaderboard actually top off at that particular week with scoring before it got to the 4 under? They must have been lower with their scores come the end of round 2.
DJ, yeah, I can go back and effort that and look.
Was it something like, did it get to like 6, 7 under the lead with Lowry, and then it came backwards, didn't it?
I think so, because DJ, let me pull up the Wikipedia page
because
you're talking.
That's an interesting view, because as you say, if we do get these damper, we're recording this clearly way before the event, but from
Friday
what I'm
morning,
seeing, there's no wind forecast at all.
Yeah.
So it's literally going to be speed of that golf course that's the defense. And of course, the crazy design of it.
And I mean, the rough, because I think that this is going to be, from everything that I've heard from members and people that know members and people that, have dipped their toes into Oakmont culture over the last couple of decades. And we talked about this. I talked about this as it pertained to Philadelphia Cricket Club, and Oakmont is another one of those proud Pennsylvania golf clubs that really prides itself on the challenge, and not just the challenge, but more specifically the challenge of the green complexes. And I would say the only greens that PGA Tour players have seen that are in the same ballpark of what they're going to see this week at Oakmont in terms of like having to start the ball well outside the hole. I was recording a podcast with Zach Blair last night, who's, he just qualified for the US Open in Springfield, and he's played at Oakmont a number of times, both in I think it was the Susquehanna. I'm potentially butchering the name of that tournament, but he's played at Oakmont a number of times, and he's like, they're all the 5-footers I'm starting outside the hole, and that never, ever happens on a PGA Tour golf course. So, one of the things that I think is going to be massive this week, and it really was the most underrated aspect of winged foot as well, which I think, in my opinion, still might be the best architecture comp for this golf course, in terms of like, we can talk about how this is a different golf course than winged foot off the tee, because I do think it's a little different than winged foot off the tee and not as bomb and gougeable. But in terms of the greens, winged foot and Philly cricket are the best comp. And I think that, like, you're going to see some real unmitigated disasters. Like, if you watch the 2016, you could watch the entire final round on YouTube. They're great. I mean, it's a great way to get a sense of the golf course. I know Gil Hans changed some stuff recently in 2023, but like 2016, you still get a good sense of the character of the golf course. Watching some of the guys early on Sunday morning that were like out of the tournament dick around on these greens and like 4-putt everything on their way to the most casual 78s, like, there's going to be a real advantage that you can find on this golf course, not just with your driver, but also with your putter.
That Pennsylvania tournament, the Philly Cricket Club, is very interesting from my viewpoint. I mean, look who fought it out. Shane Lowry, who unfortunately I was actually
Oakmont
on,
guy,
who was, of course, the 54-hole leader at Oakmont in 2016, and Sepp Straka. So, I think that's an interesting form line personally. This quote here from grounds superintendent at Oakmont, Mike McCormick, I think is very revealing. The greens are the number one defence on the course. Oakmont in today's world, it's not a crazy long golf course. We said that. There are several holes out here where the players will be hitting wedges into, and it puts even more an emphasis on the greens.
Yeah.
That's the quote.
Yeah. I agree. And like one of the things that's unique about Oakmont is that it doesn't really test long iron play. Like it's so many of these major championships, Quail Hollow, obviously, like LACC, definitely Augusta to a certain extent. So many of these US major Pinehurst, definitely, Winged Foot, certainly. So many of these golf courses test long iron play. Like that has just become a thing at US major championships and like really hard golf courses like Muirfield Village as well. This golf course has a very even approach distribution. And I think part of the reason for that is it's just funky. The yardages on some of these holes are really funky. Both par fives, like forget gaining a real advantage with a 240-yard shot into a par five. That's not happening. Like
No.
I don't think I'm not going to put anything past these guys. I don't think either of the par fives are really reachable unless maybe you hit the fairway on the first one. But if you don't hit the fairway on these par fives, forget about it. And then one of the par threes, the one that everyone's already freaking out about, the 288-yard par three. I mean, that is like a low running shot. It's a really great strategic par three, to be honest with you. The bigger, broader point and then there's one or two long par fours that it's just a real driver long iron hole. But the point that I'm making is that what's unique about Oakmont is I actually think like a lot of the more high leverage golf shots that you're going to have to hit on this golf course are like holes where, maybe you miss the fairway and you have to hack it back out to the short grass and you have 75 yards in or 100 yards in or 110 yards in. Like I actually may want my guys to be absolutely dirty inside 150 just as much as I want them to be great from 200 yards plus this week. That's rare for a major championship.
Agree with that. Do you want me to run through DJ's clubs on the final round? I mean, this will give us a view. I mean, bearing in mind, DJ did drive the ball the longest in 2016, and they have added 150 yards. But I still think it's worth running through. And what this does show is that there's a distinct difference between front nine and back nine in terms of clubs. Number one, driver wedge. Number two, drivable par four. He went driver. And then, just a dink in. 3, driver wedge again. 4, driver. He actually went into the church. Is it the pews bunker there? Church pews?
Don't want to do that.
No, he was in that kind of ravine on the right-hand side. He didn't go the fully way. Anyway, driver. Then he had to just lay up, wedge into the par 5. I think there'll be a ton of that happening anyway, as you said, because I don't think at over 600 yards, many are going to be getting there, getting home in 2, especially with the problem that, of course, hitting these greens is a different thing from 280 yards, getting them to stop.
And it's not even going to be firm and fast. Like the wetness of the golf course overall makes it play a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
But it also makes it play a little bit longer too.
Absolutely. 5 was iron wedge. 6 was a 7 iron into a par 3. 7 is driver 8 iron. 8 used 3 wood on a par 3. That's the 290. Number 9, driver 7 iron. So we haven't had an iron yet so far, less than a 6. 10, he used 3-wood pitching wedge. 11, 2 iron and 8 iron. So he used a driving iron and then an 8. 12 was a driver 4 iron into a par 5. He came up kind of, I don't know, 50, 60 yards short to the right-hand side of the actual green complex. 13, mid-iron into a par 3. 14 was iron wedge. 15, driver 8 iron. 16, 4 iron into a par 3. Then the closing stretch. The drivable par 4 at 17 used driver. And then, of course, 18, I think that's about 460, 470, driver mid-iron. Another thing to point out here, and another thing that came very clear with the coverage in 16, but also with DeChambeau's video, the false fronts on these green complexes are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And even Bryson said, and this is like 10 days, 2 weeks before the event, you cannot tell, a professional cannot tell where the greens start and finish, because the actual build up to that green complex with that short grass on the false front is just incredible. Distance control here and controlling your spin, absolutely vital. We're going to see a lot of approach shots look great when they hit the green, spin, and go a hell of a long way back away from the hole, down these cantered sort of runways up to the greens. It does feel very Philly Cricket Club, it has to be said. Exactly the same situation there with a lot of the holes.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a tough golf course to comp. Like, I don't think that there are a lot of perfect fits for Oakmont, because I think the character of the golf course is it's just such an ass kicker. Like, the closest thing on the PGA Tour to it, even though these greens are way better and more interesting and more challenging than Muirfield Village. Like, I think once you at Muirfield Village, the easiest aspect of the golf course is the greens, and at Oakmont, the hardest aspect of the golf course is the greens. But in terms of just like the thickness of this rough, and the agronomy, like it's winged foot-esque. Like it visually, aesthetically, agronomically, Winged Foot's probably the closest, because Winged Foot is also a golf course that has very large greens, and you're able to run the ball up onto those greens. And I think at both golf courses like Oakmont and Winged Foot, the greens, and this is like different from US Open. This is a very key important distinction that I want people to take away from the pod, because there's a difference here between these US Open venues and a US Open venue like Brookline or Pebble Beach. The greens are so large at Winged Foot and Oakmont that I actually think you want to identify players with great lag putting skill over guys with a great short game. I just think that there's going to be so many guys that are like, hit their second shot to that front collar of the green and have like an 80-yard putt with a lot of break, and they need to freaking find a way to 2-putt for par like it's the last thing they do on earth. And whoever does that the most, and there was a little bit of that going on at Pinehurst too, whoever is able to do that the most, I think is going to end up being your champion. And I gotta say, we'll talk about Bryson, but I don't think there's a better combination of driver putter, including Scottie Scheffler, on planet Earth right now than Bryson. And I don't think it's particularly close. And the question between distance and accuracy on the golf course is interesting. I want to spend like a tiny bit of time on that, because I know people are always going to have that question. Where do you land on that? Is this more of a bomber's paradise? I have a take, but is this more of a bomber's paradise to you, or is it more of an accurate? Is it more of a place where you want accuracy?
I mean, the two winners here, Cabrera and DJ, have clearly been
bombers,
long bombers, but you just got to look at the leaderboards around them.
Furyk,
Lowry, even, you go lower down in the top 15, there was Kevin Streelman, there was Kevin Na, there was Zach Johnson. So it's a real ecclesiastic list, if you know. Two things I think are going to be vitally important, just chiming in from where you're coming from there, Andy. Clearly, 3-putt avoidance is going to be critical. So great lag putting, as you said. On top of that, scrambling from outside of 30 yards, that's a stat I would look into.
Big time.
Guys that can literally get up and down from outside 30, 40, 50 yards. That's clearly going to be a key skill this week. I genuinely think that this could be a leaderboard where we see a bomber or two very much in head to head with someone that's short, accurate, and very, very precise with their irons.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to happen. I really do, and that's interesting because there's definitely one that I've highlighted in my plans for next week that I think is going to be very, very effective. But yeah, I think it's a course that is playable to both the short strategy, fairways and greens guys and the straight bombers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that I would say is what really creates a missed fairway penalty in golf, and I've explained this many times before, so I apologize for repeating myself, but it's important to understand on a week like this because it comes into play on a week like this. What generally really creates a missed fairway penalty and test distance is you need shorter, inaccurate guys to get totally fucked if they miss fairways. And that is the case at Oakmont. Like, I do think that if you are short and inaccurate off the tee, pack up your things. I'm not interested in you at all. I don't think this is a golf course where you could figure out a way to make it up with necessarily great iron play or like, yeah, you could putt the total lights out, but like you're going to be putting for 4 when other guys are going to be putting for 3. And I think if I was breaking it down in terms of off the tee, what I want, it's kind of a rare golf course where it should be soft enough where it gives players the opportunity to hit fairways, right? Like, I don't think that this is going to be Winged Foot, the COVID year, where nobody could hit fairways and you saw a driving accuracy percentage of 45%. I think the golf course, now, if it gets firm, no one's going to hit the fairways and it's just going to, the accurate players are going to lose their advantages and we're going to get exactly what we did at Winged Foot.
And this is the point. It's going to be where do these fairways get to in terms of their fairway roll? Because if they can't get this course as crisp as they want it, that keeps the shorter hitters definitely in play.
Totally agree.
The very reason you're saying.
Totally agree. And I think based on what I'm seeing with the weather, the golf course is going to be at least a baseline level of soft enough where you can gain a real advantage by being accurate on this golf course. And so what I would be looking for personally this week is, like, statistically, what I would do is I would find the top 25 guys in distance and I would find the top 25 guys in accuracy and I would line them up next to each other. And I would say, if you're not in the top 25 in one of these two categories, probably not super interested in you. If you're in the top 25 and great in both of them, great. That's incredible. But for you to, be on my betting card or me have serious belief that you can win the golf tournament, I need to see that you have one of those two things, because I think there's going to be two things that's going to happen at Oakmont. Number one, guys are just going to inevitably miss fairways. It's just going to happen. Even the most accurate players are going to miss fairways. Even if it's really soft, you're still probably going to see a driving accuracy percentage of maximum 60%. So on a golf course where 40% of the field is missing fairways, and you have super mega thick rough, that is really hard to get the ball out of with a middle or long iron. That's when distance is really going to matter a lot. Okay. And then the golf course has wide enough fairways, at least, where guys like Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, Aaron Rai, Corey Connors, your most accurate drivers of the ball, they will actually like have enough of an opportunity to cook because they will be soft enough where those guys can hit it and others guys can't. And if you have a situation where those guys can hit it and other guys can't, well, that's how accuracy gets tested. So I hope I did the best way of explaining that,
No,
but
you've explained it perfectly. Yeah. Yeah, I
that's
think that's
why
perfect.
I would like, I feel like you need to have one of the two at least, if that makes sense.
Yes. I'm thinking of a mixed card.
Okay.
Choosing the right bomber or bombers, but also having some iron, straight, shorter drivers who've got excellent approach play.
Well, this needs to transition us into the elephant in the room. We're 30 minutes into the podcast and we haven't talked about Scottie Scheffler. And what do we do there, Steve?
Well, Barry O'Hanrahan on the Golf Betting System podcast, he raised a very interesting point on Scottie because we're trying to find a way to get him beat, as you kind of would. The thing he didn't like about Pinehurst was, and he mentioned this also in round one at Quail Hollow, Scottie only gets upset when he doesn't think it's a fair test.
Yeah.
So it was mud ball inquiry on Thursday at the PGA.
Yeah.
And of course, with all
then
of the sand and the thick wire grass,
Pinehurst. I would even add
hated Pinehurst.
Yeah, I would even add to the mix Open Championship venues. Like, I don't
Yeah.
feel like he was in love with Troon by any means either.
No, but you know, at some point he's going to get his head around it and win an Open. That's coming. But my question to you is, bearing in mind he played this in 2016 as an amateur and was 7th after round one, scarily.
Yeah.
Do you think Scottie will see this as a fair test?
I think so. I think, okay, my hope for the golf course is like, I'm kind of rooting for him not to, because I think personally, and I wrote about this in the newsletter that we put out. So I'm not going to do a huge thing on this right now, but I think one tournament a year should provide a healthy dose of adversity for these guys. I think one tournament a year should cause temper tantrums and complainings and meltdowns and ejections. To me, once a year, that is tremendous theater. And I love the dichotomy of the one golf tournament that is the hardest and provides the most adversity is also the most democratic, right? Like, I kind of love the fact that the US Open is the one tournament that everybody in America can technically play, but it's also the biggest ass kicker tournament in all of golf. Like, I really like that dichotomy. I think the rough is thick enough where there's going to be some times where Scottie's going to miss a fairway by 2 yards and he's like, this is fucking bullshit. I've never seen anything like this on the PGA Tour. Now, how much that really fucks with him and how much he's able to overcome it, that remains to be seen. But I can tell you one thing straight up. He is going to miss fairways by 2 yards on this golf course and maybe be staring double in the face if he gets a bad lie out of the rough. And my hope, me and you, who are probably going to be, I'm not going to bet Scottie this week. You haven't told me whether or not you're going to bet Scottie this week. But as somebody who is not betting Scottie this week and selfishly rooting for him not to wipe out the field, I am at least optimistic that this rough is enough to keep him on his toes.
I backed him at Memorial. I know that's a pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, good bet.
You know, 3 to 1. It purely mathematics. I mean, I was getting the same price at Memorial, a tournament that he won the year before.
With 70 guys in the
price as I was getting at the US Open with Rory and Bryson at the same tournament. That didn't. So
no Rahm, no Bryson.
One thing, there's 2 things I'll say. Scottie, for me, hasn't been quite as accurate as he can be. And if you look at Memorial last time out, he was 16th for driving distance and 36th for driving accuracy.
It's not
He has got a
great.
bit of the lefts going on off the tee.
Hell yeah.
Now at Memorial, the rough was thick and lush, but in the main, he could cope with it. Now, like you said, I think he's going to have a few drives, hopefully, at the US Open around Oakmont, where he misses the fairway by. You can see what they've done there. They basically got the fairway widths, which are apparently 18 to up to a maximum of around about 28 yards.
So like kind of almost as narrow as Winged Foot. I hate to say it. That's pretty narrow.
But like you said, Scottie is likely to miss a fairway by 3 yards than he is by 30 yards. And as we know, the guy that misses it by 30 yards could be out with the crowd, and all of a sudden he's getting which is exactly what happened to DJ on number 10 in the final round in 2016. Got himself way out of position, got a ruling, managed to get a drop, gets away with it. And there are going to be situations, I think, with Scottie where literally he's going to be in a situation and he'll stand and go, I'm fucked. I cannot get this to the green. And that is such a rarity for Scottie Scheffler on the PGA Tour. That's when you might start to hopefully see some kind of meltdown, steam coming out of the ears, because we know he can. We know that he gets into this zone where he's in complete control and everything just runs smoothly with him and Ted. But if there's going to be one course on one tournament that actually really pushes the boundaries of whether he can stay in that kind of Zen-like mode, it's going to be Oakmont. It's going to be the US Open.
Yeah. And just to piggyback one thing, and like, I understand thinking of all the galaxy brain reasons why Scottie Scheffler won't win. I have some self-awareness to that. Like, we understand there's an element of putting the cloud makeup on. Like, he's one of the 10 to 15 best players I think that's ever picked up a golf club. Okay. And like, as soon as you get down with that and understand that, then this run is going to make more sense to you. Okay. Because it's not a run. He's just one of the greatest to ever do it. And we have over like a 2.5, 3 year sample size now where this guy is just it. And he's not going anywhere. And that doesn't mean he's going to win every major. Doesn't mean he's going to win every tournament. It doesn't even mean that he's going to have a 25% win probability or a 30% win probability, or that he's going to win multiple majors a year. I'm not picking him this week not just because I think there are better golf courses that exist for him than Oakmont. It's really tough to win 2 majors. And you can think that two in a row, and you can think that Scottie Scheffler is, truly one of the greatest golfers to ever do it. And still a lot of the greatest golfers to ever do it were not routinely winning back-to-back majors or 2 majors in a year. It's just really, really hard to do. So, Scottie does have some like natural selection regression working against him, I would say, at this major championship. But the other thing that I would say from a pure like nerdy golf course standpoint, I'm not totally sold that this is like a great golf course for you to be able to separate and attack with your irons. It could be, and I could be wrong about that, but Pinehurst had a little bit of this where it was just a really hard golf course to attack with your irons. And it just ended up being a little bit of like who was the best lag putter. And it was just, you really had to pick your spots of like when you could be aggressive with your iron play. And like a lot of the par 3s, even at Pinehurst, it was just like, okay, you have to land it here and that's it. And then you take your 2-putt and you have to move on. There's a little bit of Oakmont to that. I mean, it's such a strategically challenging golf course, and that could be an edge for Scottie too. Like, is anybody smarter at getting the ball in the hole under difficult conditions and like making sure he plays to the right side of greens and stuff like that? Like, that's the problem with Scottie, is like anytime you start to make an argument for a potential reason why he couldn't play well, it almost like turns into an argument for why he couldn't play well.
The one US Open in my mind where he really had a seriously seriously good chance was Brookline. He's been there and thereabouts, but it was Brookline where he was literally head-to-head with Fitzpatrick going down the stretch. Do you see much Brookline in this? I don't.
Not as much. I think Brookline has like 2 small greens. Like, I think that this golf course is defined by its greens and these run-up shots that you're able to hit. And Brookline has a little bit of that. But the architecture is a little bit different here. Brookline has like kind of a different style of bunkering and doesn't really give you the opportunity, in my opinion, to hit a bunch of run-up shots. And it doesn't really require great, like, long putting. I think the US Open venue that you want to look at most, like I said, is Winged Foot, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel quite confident in that, I would say. I mean, Gil Hanse has also done restoration work on LACC. He's also done restoration work on Brookline. He's also done restoration work on Southern Hills, but none of those golf courses, like Oakmont's very distinctive. None of those golf courses are perfect comps to it. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. So we're hoping that there might be a chance of an upset.
Well, that would be my next question is once we get past Scottie, where do you go?
He's favourite for a reason. He's a ridiculously Tiger Woods type price for a reason as well. So it's hard to bet again. I've just looked at my Hans golf course statistics over the last 5 years, and guess who's top? Scottie Scheffler 1, Matt Fitzpatrick 2, and there's a tie for 3rd. Fleetwood, McIlroy, Justin Thomas, and then
Sounds
Clark,
about right.
DeChambeau, DJ. So I don't know, but yes, I think there is an opportunity to be looking elsewhere than just Scottie Scheffler.
Talk me through it. I want to give you the opportunity to lead off. I mean, Bryson 9-1, Rahm 14-1.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions at the top of the board.
Okay.
I don't fancy Rory at all. So
I just don't think he's super
he's
sharp
not in the headspace
right now. Yep, agree with you. I don't think it's a bad golf course for him by any means. I mean, he hasn't finished outside of the top 15 in a US Open in 6 straight appearances.
Should have won last year, as we know.
Yeah.
The two I'm struggling to choose between are Bryson, for obvious reasons. One thing I have noted with Bryson, actually, he has never defended, and I know it's a different course, he's never defended a professional title in his life. Just throwing that one in there.
It's interesting.
The one I do really like, and I'm hoping for some really good signs out of Live Golf Virginia, is Jon Rahm.
Yeah, I would imagine he is deserving of that after what we saw at Quail Hollow.
I think he's starting to get his mojo back. I genuinely think, and again, this is another discussion we had on the Golf Betting System podcast, was Barry thinks that John's starting to find a bit of fire because he feels like he's undervalued compared to, say, Bryson, just in the general situation that Bryson now is clearly winning majors. He's dominating social media with content, which is absolutely fantastic. And Jon Rahm, you basically, and it's purely John's choice because he's a family man, he's kind of a forgotten guy these days, but you're just starting to feel momentum building. And the performance at Quail Hollow was interesting. There's courses here, and you're absolutely right. There's no correlating golf courses, but if you do look at Angel Cabrera, and that's kind of limited because his PGA Tour successes were very small. He used to play a lot of European Tour back in the day. But if you look at Dustin Johnson, and then you go to the other extreme and look at Jim Furyk. Now, that's a guy that's finished 2nd at Oakmont twice on the trot, Furyk. Courses that you can see crossover on, in my mind, are some of these are pretty wacky, by the way. Kapalua, the plantation course.
I was going to ask Riviera.
DJ's one, Furyk's one. Riviera's another, of course. DJ a first, couple of seconds and a third. Furyk's had a third there. I think ultimately that's slightly too long for Jim. Augusta, of course, especially with Cabrera and DJ. Quail Hollow, Cabrera had a third there. Furyk actually won at Quail Hollow, believe it or not, back in the day. A couple of runners up. Another one is Travellers. Now, Cabrera had a 9th and an 11th there. DJ's won there. Jim Furyk's had a 4th and a 5th. Northeast Golf Course featuring Northeastern Poana. I know there's a mix there with Bent, but even so. Another one I find fascinating. Where did Jim Furyk win his major? Well, that was
Olympia
Field.
Fields. Yeah,
Yeah.
which I actually think is a good comp.
Dustin Johnson won the BMW Championship
Also,
there.
that year that Jon Rahm, won Olympia Fields when it was super firm and baked out.
Well, they were in a
That's
playoff together.
Yeah, that's a great comparison for what you're gonna see at Oakmont this week, and I
There's
believe
also a carryover, and this again, TPC Boston. Now they don't play that recently, but Cabrera's got a 4th there. DJ's won there. Jim Furyk, even though that course, he's had a 4th, a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th. So it's those. That's kind of and also Cabrera and DJ had decent Open Championship finishes before winning here at Oakmont. So with Cabrera, it was 4th at Carnoustie and also 7th at Liverpool.
Mhm.
Look at DJ 2011, all those years ago, 2nd at Sandwich when Darren Clark outlasted him. 9th at Libham, and then since then, 9th at Troon, 8th at Sandwich again, 6th at St Andrews. Jim Furyk, a huge list, but 4th at Troon, 4th at Birkdale, 10th at Carnoustie, 4th at Liverpool, 5th at Birkdale, 4th at Liverpool. So there's a trend there with Open Championship form and Open Championship top 10s. Now, Scottie Scheffler kind of starts to tick a box. He's got some half-decent Open finishes so far. Bryson is nowhere in that regard.
He's not.
But I tell you who is, Jon Rahm.
Yeah.
Sneakily good at Open Championships. 11th at Portrush. In 21, he was 3rd at Sandwich. 2nd at Liverpool and 7th last year at Troon, which was a terrible season for Jon Rahm. He's only top 10 in a major. I'm just getting the feeling from Jon, this course could be absolutely right up his street. As long as he can show me something where he's accurate and long off the tee in Virginia, I'm going to be severely tested, I think, not to actually put him up.
Yeah,
And I know you're a Jon Rahm fan.
I'm a big Jon Rahm fan, and I was close on him at Quail. And at the Augusta. I really do think I agree with you. Like I kind of think the next one is the one that he's going to get though at Portrush. I still think he might be gearing, and I kind of think the two bets to make that logically make the most sense in terms of like who is playing the most complete golf at the moment combined with their course fit that you would really feel confident could just straight up beat Scottie over the course of 72 holes. And I've talked about this in the last 2 pods I've done, but to me, it is Bryson and Rahm. And I have kind of gone back and forth between the two. There's pros and cons to both. With Rahm, you can bet another guy really. And that, or like, based on at least the way that I like to bet and try not to be too overexposed. But like, if I bet Bryson 9-1, I'm not going to have too much more on my betting card versus if I bet Rahm at 14-1, I could even have another guy on my betting card. That's one of the tournament favorites. That's a big deal. But for me, like, I still think I give the edge to Bryson because I think that his driver is a lethal weapon. Like, he is long and straight. And I think that if there's ever a golf course that's going to allow you to separate with your driver even more so than Quail Hollow potentially allowed him to do because of how high the missed fairway penalty is going to be here if you are not a good driver of the ball. Like, Quail Hollow was a great golf course for Bryson off the tee because it accentuated off the tee skill. It also didn't totally screw you if you were a bad driver of the ball. Like, you could still compete. The difference between that and Oakmont is that Oakmont accentuates great off the tee skill, but then it also knocks guys out if you can't drive it well. And so I don't think Bryson has to beat too many guys this week if he putts well. And that's the other kicker for me for Bryson, is that he showed that on greens like this, 14 stimp greens, the most undulating and fast greens in the world, Bryson can win.
You
And
can, yeah.
he started putting better at
Yeah.
Augusta, and I think Bryson's one of the best putters in the world. I do. And
The one thing that concerns me with Bryson,
distance control with irons.
distance control with his wedges.
Yeah, fair
That
enough.
is the weakness.
Super fair. Super fair. That would be it, because that's what really felt like
That's
lost
what
him the
cost him at
PGA
Kyle Holler.
Championship. Yeah.
Distance control with the
Yeah.
wedges.
Yeah.
He gets into so many scenarios where he's got less than 100 yards in, and he just hasn't got the crispness with those wedges that if he had that crispness, he'd be winning tournaments by a country mile.
Yeah. Okay. I actually, because I have another, I have a call in like 10 to 15. So I apologize that we can't do our normal 90-minute gaunt today, but take me a little bit farther down the board, Steve.
There's one bet I've had so far.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. Give me the bet that you've made.
He's Austrian, and his name is Sepp Straka.
Dissecting.
I've got 60 on Betfair Exchange.
Yeah, popular.
He's available over here widely at 50 to 1. I think this course could be perfect for Sepp Straka, and his numbers at Memorial were absolutely fantastic. First for driving accuracy. He hit over 80% of fairways at Muirfield Village. He was in the top 10 for greens in regulation. He was ninth for ball total driving, 8th for ball striking. Even better, and this number I found absolutely incredible. For a guy that isn't the longest, he was first for strokes gained off the tee at Muirfield Village.
Yeah.
And that was purely his straightness off the tee.
Pounds
that's an incredible number.
Yeah.
So I think Sepp's all in. We've spoken about Philly Cricket Club. He has now got 2 wins upstate, one at the John Dick. I know they're not linkable, but he can get on with the agronomy. I think Sepp Straka could be a fantastic bet for the US Open.
It's hard for me to disagree with you.
Are you in line with that one?
I think he's one of the best. I think he's a top 5 iron player in the world.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And I think that you could pretty much get everything that you're looking for and hoping for with Colin Morikawa. Sepp's probably doing that right now at double or triple the price.
Absolutely. 3rd for putting at Muirfield Village.
Yeah.
The guy was insane with the putter rounds 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So he's going there with momentum. And don't forget, and I mentioned this, he's got a little bit of Open Championship background, because he was second a couple of years ago in the Open that was won by at a canter by, I'm having a brain fade. Who won 2 years ago? Oh, Brian Harman.
Yeah.
So it's not as if and we know that he's had also another top 10 at the PGA Championship. He's not prolific. I mean, if you look at Shane Lowry, where Shane plays well on the PGA Tour in the United States and where Sepp plays well, they're pretty much identical to a certain degree.
Can I give you one? Can I give you one more, Steve, at a pretty big price?
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say, but please do.
Pendrith.
Yeah.
I've been betting him, we've kind of made it a little bit of a joke in our community, because Kyle started betting him when he was 280 to 1 last fall. And now I think he's all the way down to like 120. If he keeps playing well in Canada, I think he probably will close around 100. I think 100 to 1's fine on him, particularly for betting with an each way. I don't think he could beat Scottie Scheffler over the course of 72 holes at a US Open, but do I think that he could finish top 5? Absolutely. In fact, he did finish top 5 for us at the PGA Championship and helped me win a lot of money that week in DraftKings. And I have no reason to believe that he can't compete at Oakmont again.
One more. I know we're tight on time. I think you're going to like this guy, because I know that you've mentioned him in one of our majors podcasts already this year. Harris English.
Always. He's got 3 top 10s at US Open venues with like super thick rough. Like he finished 4th at Winged Foot.
A winner at Plantation,
Yeah.
Kapalua. A winner at the Travelers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of form. He was top 10 at Olympia Fields. And that year at TPC Boston, where Scottie Scheffler shot a 59, but DJ just ran away. English, I believe, finished second. He was definitely top 5.
Yeah.
So he ticks so many of these courses. I think Harris English could be a very, very good bet each way as well. And of course, I know it was very backdoor, but he also ticks that box for someone that performed and got a top 10 at the PGA Championship, the outing before winning a US Open.
Is that a big trend line? Is that top
Very
10 at
big.
PGA? Okay, that's
Wyndham Clark screws that, but also worthy of note here, recent US Open history, since 2009, 12 of the last 16 US Open champions, first time major winners.
Huh. I don't love that for Bryson coming back as a defending champ,
But we like it for Sepp.
Yeah, Pendy.
Pendy. We certainly don't mind it for Harris English, and he has flashed at US Opens and majors.
Oh yeah. Okay, Steve. One name your winner. Do you think it's Rahm for you this week?
Oh, I don't know. Look, I got burnt last year tipping up DeChambeau at the PGA, and then he went on to win the US Open after finishing second at Xander. I try and learn from my mistakes. I might go win only DeChambeau and Rahm, and then just backfill with Sepp and English at far bigger prices.
Fair enough.
That could be my fall.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go Bryson, my big Pendy futures, and maybe I'll have room to add one more in the middle tier. Maybe Sepp is the guy. It's a good sell.
It's going to be a good one, though, Andy. It's going to be a good one.
I can't wait. Where can everyone else find the rest of your work this week, Steve?
I'm at Bamford Golf on X. Steve Bamford on Blue Sky. Golf Betting System is the website. We've already got available major statistics in terms of average scores and positions. We've got US Open form stats. Predictor model will be up on Monday, the 9th of June, as will be my betting preview.
Cheers, Steve. I'll see you for Portrush.
Always a pleasure. See you again in Northern Ireland very soon.